Laura?
Talking at you and I'm muted, sorry.
Welcome here. Hey, Lance. Pam, I'm going to mute you just because you got a lot of noise in the background.
So as part of this process, I want to endorse neither a Logitech external camera nor a Lenovo 730 laptop. $7:05. If we go an entire minute without anybody joining us, I guess we can start.
Did it.
Hey, Lance, as you round out the St. Louis contingent. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? So I'd like to welcome you to the first FY23 budget review, and let me go ahead and share my screen. I'll just tell you this budget has been reviewed as to format, not so much with regard to content, by the Finance Committee, and thanks this year to the help provided by Crystal Light from St. Louis and Joe Klein from West. Let's see, Sonia and Bart have also been attending, and thanks also posthumously to for all his help to Elle, who was very helpful in fiscal administration throughout the entire year and over the years. So we appreciate that. So okay, let's see. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And this budget has been passed by the AEU board. Okay, let me get that away here. So pull this up. Okay, and then behind it. All right, for reference purposes, I also have the FY22 budget. So let me go ahead and go over first the key items within the budget and take questions on that. And then I figure I can go through each section of the budget and take questions on that as well. Since it's difficult for me to see everybody, the part as we discussed, please let me know if there's a question from folks in the field. So let me answer this. This has not been, last year was not a good economic year for our societies, with the economic downturn associated with COVID, and that got reflected in the FNS submissions. And so we got a $10,000 reduction in our apportionment revenue. We also decided at the board level that we want to go ahead and hire an interim executive director for next year. Once Bart actually departs. Bart's not actually leaving us until the end of the calendar year, which will be the end of the first quarter of the AEU fiscal year. The AEU fiscal year goes from October 1st to December 31st. We are continuing our funding of the consulting leader program at a $19,000 level. That was what was recommended by Liz Collier and by John Bacon and endorsed by the board as a level that would provide a reasonable level of continuity for the consulting leader program for FY23, while at the same time we allocated sufficient money for an interim executive director. And the bottom line for all this is that we are projecting a $5,000 FY23 deficit, but that deficit was anticipated when we did our 3-year financial plan projection a couple of years ago, as we talked about funding the consulting leader program. We had some surpluses from the federal PPP money, and we've been basically stretching those out over a few years to support the consulting leader program. So apportionments are down. We're getting an interim executive director. Bart's continuing for 3 months. We're continuing consulting leader, and we have a deficit. Anybody have any initial questions on those major points with regard to the budget? Or should I go into the detail? Going once, going twice? Okay. All right, so let me go to the budget itself. Okay, so the apportionment level, we project this year to be at 190,000 as opposed to 200,000 for the previous year. Unrestricted individual donations continuing at $45,000. If you have not donated to the AEU, go right now to aeu.org, click on the donate fund and go ahead and donate. When I donated to the AEU for this year, it made me feel really, really good. So you'll have the same rush if you do that yourself. We have an individual who makes an annual donation of $10,000. We continue to accept that with appreciation, and we're expecting to get $850 in bits of merchandise and books and what have you that get sold through the AEU. Any questions with regard to those aspects of our income? Okay, continuing. For programming, there's our visiting leader program. And let's see, their society payments for visiting leaders amount to $1,500. There are dues paid by the National Leader Council. That's also $1,500. We did not assume any income from the assembly for next year. There may be different plans with regard to the assembly by the new board, but the current budget shows no money for that. But you'll see in the expense side, we are expecting a little over $5,000 in assembly and related expenses. Normally, when assemblies are held, they're a break-even proposition. So this is assuming a deficit of about $5,200 for assemblies. The YES conference is a self-sufficient process, $8,500 in revenue and expense there. The PES conference, $500 for revenue and expense there. And you can see the total in that section, $12,000. Any question with regard to that? Okay, this is quite a crowd. All right, then next up, as has been our practice the last several years.
There is a question about whether you're planning to forward the Excel spreadsheet.
This is the same budget that's available to you in your delegate materials. So you already have it. Bart, how can delegates get access to this information?
It's on the delegate page, and I'll put a link to that particular file into the chat.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Let me go down here a little bit. Well, not go that far. Come on now. There we go. So the AEU has two different funds. As of the time the budget was passed by the board and leadership funds had $710,000 in them. And what our practice has been to assume that if needed, we would go ahead and take 4.5% from those funds and use that to go ahead and help us balance the budget. So that's where that $31,950 comes from. There's also an Adler fund that supports leaders in training. It also pays for the dean, Randy Best, and also helps contribute to our administrative expenses. Okay, so that's the Adler fund side. But that's also a break-even proposition. We get money from the Adler fund, and that pays for what I just mentioned. There are also two different Mosler funds of $8,000 each, and basically the board has decided that those will go ahead and help us to fund the consulting leader program this year. And there's a $3,000 grant that we get every year from the Rappaport Fund that was established by the Philadelphia Society. So you add all those up, that comes up to total income of $372,891. Any other questions on the income side of the world? Okay, I've got a but I don't have a question.
Yes.
Alan.
Can you tell me the difference between the visiting leader and the consulting leader program?
I could do that, or Bart, you want to, or Sonia, you want to chime in on that?
Sure. I'm happy to. So the visiting leader program is basically a single visit kind of program that societies can request that a leader from the panel visit their society, and that can be maybe for a weekend, so there'd be a workshop and a sorry, my camera keeps popping off. I need to stop it from doing that. Anyway, so that would be maybe doing a talk and doing some kind of workshop or something on the course of a weekend is typical for the Visiting Leaders Bureau. And then the consulting leader is more of a longstanding kind of agreement where a society applies for a leader, basically for a grant for a leader to work with their group. And we have 3 that are in operation right now. That would be in Austin and Silicon Valley and Susquehanna Valley.
Thank you.
All right, I see Maura.
Yeah, just a quick question. The $10,000 that's restricted individual donation, what does that mean by saying that it's restricted?
Bart, you want to chime in on that one for the that's the accounting category, but it's basically used as a way to carve out the specific amount we get from this individual. But my understanding is that that individual has not made a restriction on her contribution, but that's being used as an accounting mechanism. But Bart, has she placed any restrictions on her use of it?
She typically asks that the money kind of be put in certain piles, though it's more of a request than a requirement.
Okay, thank you.
We appreciate her generosity, and maybe sometimes we'll say, yeah, sure, you should acknowledge me, and maybe we'll have a party for her or something. I don't know if she's done this for many years. Alan, you have another question?
Income from individual memberships, is that included in apportionment?
The individual membership, that would be included in the unrestricted donations, I would think, Bart.
That's not apportionment. It's actually for people who sign on as individual members of the American Ethical Union. They have the option of paying an annual amount, and some people choose more than others.
Right, but the question is which of the 2 categories that amount is rolled into? The
That's unrestricted.
Unrestricted. I thought it was unrestricted. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions on income? Okay. All right. So then now going over to the expense side of things, general contributions 1,000. I'll have you know that 4 years ago this amount was 6,000, and basically this is for us sending out letters through snail mail to people, encouraging them to contribute, because not everybody is up on the internet. So we've made a lot of savings in this area, but there are some expenses associated with getting contributions. Okay, then going down to programming here, consulting leader program, as we discussed and described, it's 19,000. The visiting leader program has got expenses of $8,300. Okay, so basically the AEU is subsidizing that so that societies who don't have leaders can get the benefit of the visiting leader program. There are 3 leaders in training, and that there's $30,000 that is funded out of the Adler Fund, and that's what that amount is there for. There are program staff, and basically this is paying for Jake, who's our communications coordinator, for Randy, who's the dean of the leader training program, and for Trish Cowan, who is our education coordinator and provides youth event coordination services as well. So if you add up their salaries and their fringes, that adds up to that $78,000 number. The assembly, I said, we allocated $5,000. We bumped it up with a 5% inflation figure. By the way, we included 5% inflation in salary numbers and in some other expense categories this year. When we were doing the budget, the year-to-year inflation number was 5%. Maybe it's a little higher. Perhaps the next board might want to consider additional allocations for inflation purposes. The S conference we mentioned, 8,500 self-sufficient, FES 500 self-sufficient. There's also education-related expenses and programming for $3,000. There's $3,000 allocated to the F-Coaxing program. There's $4,000. Excuse me? Oh, okay, there's $4,000 allocated for New Society Development. It was $5,000 this past year. They didn't spend it. We reduced the amount slightly to $4,000, but certainly we want to encourage the development of new societies like Atlanta and Rochester and hopefully others. And then we're keeping a program reserve of $5,000 because we don't know what's going to happen in the course of the year. Some thought it was prudent this year, as in previous years, to have a $5,000 reserve. There are, okay, any questions on those programming expenses?
There's two questions in the chat, Tom, one from Pam Berglund. Pam, did you want to state the question?
Sure. Trying to understand, we brought up our last meeting, is how much a member must pay. And in Bergen, it's what they can or what they is that, or is there a specified amount that we require to be?
Okay, Pam, I'm afraid your audio is really not going well, but I think what I understand you to say is new members at Bergen are asked to pay what they can. Is that correct? And then there's something
Yes.
different for existing current members?
You mean in
Yes.
terms of, you mean for your own income in Bergen?
Right. So let's say that a member joins, they want to be a member, but they don't the membership avail what they want. Type is true. But they're able to membership fee.
So Pam, I'm still having difficulty hearing you, but with regard to contributions.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. No, with regard to contributions, the contributions here were listed in individual restricted donations, and that's what people contribute either by sending a check to the AEU or by clicking on AEU.org, website. The apportionment amount is calculated, and that's something that's charged to each individual society, and that's a reasonably complicated function of the numbers of members that each society has, as well as their total income that they have from rentals or dividends, capital gains, that kind of thing. So it's not really related to what societies themselves are getting by way of income. And if you want to go ahead and restate your question in the chat, we can come back to it too, because it really is hard to hear you. Okay. Okay. Other questions?
Great.
Matthew Howell had questions in the chat as well.
Yeah, I have two questions. What is included in the leader training fund? What does that actually pay for? And the same question for the New Society Development Fund. What do those actually pay for? Okay, so in terms of the Adler Fund, the Adler Fund pays for leadership training, right? Those three interns who are, having internships at different societies as part of their training process. It pays for Randy Best, who's the dean
of the leader training program, and it pays for admin amounts. And I should mention also that for this year, we're also asking the Adler Fund, since there was a reduction in the number of leaders in training, for them to go ahead and contribute $10,000 out of the Adler Fund for the consulting leader program. And we're waiting to go ahead and get feedback from the New York Society trustees, who are the people who make the decision with regard to the uses of the Adler Fund. I should mention that earlier.
So Randy is funded both under program staff and leaders in training?
No. Rand, if you look at the expense side, Randy's there. That's an expense. But if your question was with regard to income, the Adler Fund.
No, we're talking about expense at the moment.
Right,
So,
right.
Okay, so what are we spending the $30,000 for leaders in training for?
Those are for the, and Bart, maybe you could elaborate on the expenses associated with leaders in training and their internships at societies.
Well, primarily it's internships is the highest cost part of that, but other things might be the union's contribution toward training that people take with other groups. It also could involve travel and things along those lines. Many times our leaders in training are also speaking at ethical societies, and so there's some funding to help that happen.
Okay.
And just a note here on the bottom that the last time we asked about the balance of the fund, there is, or at least there was, over $1 million in that fund, and that's what the New York Society uses to fund the leader program.
Yeah, that's not my questions. My questions have to do with what we're spending the money for. The other one is what are we buying with the new Society Development Fund?
Right. So that's travel for leaders and for others to go ahead and go to new society locations like Atlanta previously, and Rochester, and possibly other locations. But I will tell you the new society development budget of $5,000 was significantly underspent this past year. So I think we want them to spend more to try to encourage the development of new societies, but that has not been happening. So that's certainly going to be a challenge for the new board, and also for our society president in-person retreat about how much effort we need to put into development of those new societies. So
there's also things that are covered in the consulting and visiting leaders programs, because it's travel of leaders to new societies and new locations.
John is actually here. John Dakin,
go ahead.
chair,
Mark,
he can explain that a little bit better, I think.
yeah,
Hey,
Mark, go
Matthew.
ahead.
Hey, Matthew.
John's going to explain it. Okay.
So I'll try. I think I need to talk to our treasurer a little bit more. I think we've been doing a lot of really good work in new society development. We're just not spending any money to do it. So because a lot of it in the past involved travel, and the pandemic has been a bit of a silver lining, has been the ability to engage people remotely. And so members of our committee have had some really nice engagement with people starting new groups using Zoom, and we've had leaders giving talks to groups in Iowa, for example, doing so remotely. So we've been able to avoid spending money, but the engagement and the effort continues.
Yeah, and John, I'm horrified that my comment about not spending the money would be any indication that I thought that New Society Development was not trying to do their absolute best to go ahead and expand the movement, and the AEU was extremely happy to go ahead and hear that you were able to do so without spending money.
Does that help, Matthew?
Okay, other questions? Okay, let's see. Now we're down to the admin in general, admin section. Administrative in general, those are various office and rental related expenses. Admin staff, this is a very significant savings from past years, and kudos to Bart for doing some reorganization in this area. Basically, we're spending $10,000 for bookkeeping support from the New York Society, and we hired an admin assistant, and that basically that this is saving us. So let's see, how much did we have in FY22 for this for admin staff? We had $73,000. This is down now to $37,000. So this is being a real help in balancing the budget and helping us hire an interim executive director and continuing the consulting leader program. So there's been a radical change over the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years in reducing administrative costs, putting more money into program for the AEU. So that's required a huge amount of work on all our parts. And it's like, I think people should know that whenever they contribute to AEU.org, that those dollars are going to help AEU programming, and that we're squeezing every last penny out of the budget to support programs while minimizing administrative costs. So there's that 37,000 number. Board travel. This is for folks like the expectation is that board travel is going to resume to a greater degree, I guess, as COVID hopefully wanes somewhat. This also covered trips to the annual retreat that the last 4 years, my wife and I have hosted that out in Southhold, and my wife and I are pleased to report that we saved the AEU $12,000 as a result of those hosting those retreats. So everybody had a good time there, and we got a lot of work done too. So that's for travel, and then communication. That the bulk of that is $15,000 for some much needed website redesign for the AEU. The website that wasn't done this past year, but which helped us budget wise. But we're hopeful that this can get done this year. Okay, so that's administrative costs. Any questions about administrative costs? Going once, going twice. Okay. Next up, as I said, interim executive director for 3/4 of a year, $90,000 on an annual basis. Divide by 3, multiply by 4. That's $120,000. And when Dwight Panasso has taken a look at the cost for interim executive directors, it looks like that's within the range that's feasible. And that process of selecting an interim executive director should be starting in the not too distant future. And there's been an awful lot of research that's been done related to that. We're paying for Bart to be full-time for the rest of the year. And kudos again to you, Bart, for doing all the extra work in terms of keeping AEU fiscal administration and overall administration running after Elle's passing. We're very, very grateful to you for that. And that'll continue to the end of the year, and that's personnel expenses. Then, while we're at it, affiliated organizations, we give $3,500 a year to Humanists International, the international organization that we're a part of. And we also give $1,000 to Secular Coalition of America, which is involved in lobbying on behalf of secular and humanist organizations. So you add all that stuff up, and that comes to expenses of $377,784. There's a slight deficit there, but we had a surplus carry forward that was originally planned from last year. And so from that kind of multi-year perspective, there's a reserve available. But we had some other expenses in FY22, so maybe this is a little bit of a spurious comparison. But basically, the thing to focus on is that we've got a budget that's pretty close to being balanced, and that there's approximately a $5,000 deficit contained within it that we'd be taking out of our board and leadership funds if necessary. So other questions, comments, concerns, like I did with New Society Development, misrepresentations. Anything else? Going once, going twice. I will point out that there are other projects involved in the fiscal area. We're looking to go ahead and change our broker so that we can get we can reduce our expenditures, have greater returns in ESG or socially responsible investment, have more of a focus on that and greater diversification in our portfolio. We're trying also to catch up on our prior year audits, and I expect after I stop as treasurer, and by the way, I've got 14 more days as AEU treasurer, and then I'm terminated out of this. That I'll be spending some time on that, and you know, we hope to have a good transition with the next treasurer. And I strongly endorse Liz Singer in that capacity. So, other questions, comments? People ready for brunch? Going once, going twice. All right, so that's all I've got. Unless anybody want to talk about anything else. It's a beautiful day here in Brooklyn. No, that's it. Okay. All right, Bart, you want to?
Yep. Thanks everyone for popping out. So we were recording this, and so that will be made available, and it'll be we're putting the links to the recordings on that same delegates page. So please bookmark that so that you can get back to it readily. You can also get there by going to the AU.org homepage and then clicking through the assembly event and going to the link that way. Just know that, you know, as soon as we have the videos, we'll put them up, and then you can peruse them at your leisure.
Okay, and we'll be doing this again on Wednesday night.
Wednesday, yep.
Yeah.
And people may want to think about coming out Tuesday for the pre-reading event that'll be related to the membership mini conference that we will have later in this month. So hope to see you out then.
Tom, we need to thank you for your many years as treasurer, and you know, all your efforts and putting this together and helping during a troubled time. So thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think is 3.5, but yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
It seems longer though, I bet.
It seems longer, yes.
Okay. 3.5 as treasurer as many.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Enjoy.
All right.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.